He lifted that crystal glass high, the one I had gifted him years ago, and pointed it toward the woman who never labored for him, never rocked him through fevers, never dried his tears. "Here is the woman who replaced my mother," he declared, so proudly that my bones rattled under my skin. His wife laughed, her mother beamed, and my own heart seemed to shatter like thin porcelain on the cold tile floor. "My name is Grace, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Tell me, have you ever been made a ghost in your own child's eyes?" I stood there, my hands folded, a polite smile sealed on my face like cheap wrapping paper, trying to contain the scream clawing at my throat. I had paid for the suit he wore, paid for the wedding, paid for the rings. I had stood silent while they decorated their new world with the money I handed over like a desperate beggar feeding birds who never came back. But that toast, that single vile sentence, left no air in my lungs. They all turned to look at me, expecting I might raise my glass to, might offer a blessing to the woman who replaced me, the woman who had fed him 3 Sunday dinners and somehow claimed my lifetime of sacrifice. "Wonderful," I said, forcing my lips to curve. "Then ask her for money for the down payment." A hush fell so heavy you could taste it. His wife's eyes went wide. The mother-in-law's painted lips twitched. My son stared at me as if I'd spoken a foreign language, like I'd broken some holy script. But I was done playing the perfect mother. For months, he had begged me to help with the down payment for a new place. I'd promised I would. A family apartment, a fresh start, he said. I had held that promise close like a fragile baby bird in my palm, thinking it would keep us tied. But the moment he crowned another woman in my place, he cut the final string. My boy, my once soft boy. He didn't even think what I might do with that apartment he thought was in his name. I kept the smile. I kept it hard enough to slice steel. Inside, I was already shifting, already burning every trace of my loyalty, every memory of small feet in my kitchen. He could worship whoever he wanted, but he would pay his own way from now on. His laughter stuttered out, the celebration leaking its color, like blood draining from a body. A mother is a mirror, and I refused to show him a reflection of meekness anymore. Somewhere in that moment, I could feel the earth tilt, as if the universe had waited for me to finally grow a spine. The room buzzed with confusion, knives of tension slicing the soft cake of their anniversary. He had no idea. No idea I had already contacted a real estate agent that morning. No idea I was transferring the apartment to someone who deserved a chance at life, someone who wouldn't spit on my love. They wanted a new mother. They could get a new bank account too. I watched him set down his glass, face pale. His new queen tried to soothe him, but there was no balm for a wound like that. As I stood among their fragile happiness, a strange peace washed over me, a peace I'd never tasted, made of vengeance and freedom. Like honey cut with sharp whiskey. He had replaced me. I would replace him too. They say a mother's love is eternal, but no one warns you what happens when that love is trampled. When the child you raised grows teeth meant to bite the very hands that once fed him. That night, as they clinked glasses and tried to ignore the hurricane behind my calm words, I began to draw up my own storm. I went home early from the party, the silence of my car swallowing me whole. My hands shook on the steering wheel. I could still hear his toast echoing in my skull, the woman who replaced my mother. How easy it was for him to carve me out of his story, to bury me beneath a stranger's praise. I opened the drawer where I'd kept the apartment paperwork, the same apartment he was so sure would be his. I ran my fingers over the contract, remembering how he'd come to me, practically begging, voice cracking like a boy's again. "Mom, you've always been there for me. Please help us get this place." And I had agreed, didn't I? Because that's what mothers do. We agree. We swallow. We sacrifice. We bend our backs until our bones snap. But something had changed inside me. His words had hammered a hole through my heart, and I was done patching it with blind hope. So I picked up my phone and called my real estate agent. "Grace," she answered, surprised to hear from me so late. "Hi, Evelyn," I said. I need to update the beneficiary on the apartment contract. She hesitated. To your son and daughter-in-law, right? No, I let the word fall like a brick. I want it transferred to a program for single mothers starting over. The pause on the other end was a prayer answered. I could almost hear Evelyn smile through the shock. Are you sure? Positive, I said. I signed the documents that same night, hand steady, pulse dancing with a wicked rhythm. Every signature was a confession. I will no longer be your fool. The next day, I put on my best dress, the one he said made me look old-fashioned, and I went over to their rented condo. I had no intention of being small, not anymore. He opened the door, still drowsy, wearing the same arrogance like a second skin. Mom, what are you doing here? I came to talk about the apartment, I said. Relief rushed across his face like cheap perfume. Oh, good. I knew you'd calm down. Calm? He had no idea what kind of calm had settled in me. The calm of a woman who had found her own backbone. I changed the beneficiary, I told him, straight to his stunned eyes. His jaw dropped like a child caught stealing. You what? It's going to single mothers who need a chance, I said, voice so steady it scared even me. He started to shout, but I held up one hand. That was all it took to hush him. I had given him life. I could take my blessings away just as easily. Maybe she can replace me in your heart, I told him. But she cannot replace me in your wallet. His wife hovered behind him, lips pressed thin, eyes darting between us like a cornered animal. But I didn't look at her. She was just a mirror reflecting my son's worst weakness. He had crowned her queen. Let her build his castle too. I stepped back into the hall, breathing in the sweet air of my own freedom, letting the echo of the outrage wash over me like a benediction. I would not be forgotten. I would not be replaced. At last, I was done being their silent benefactor, their ever-giving ghost. This was my resurrection, born from the ashes of their betrayal. Poetic, wasn't it? The next morning, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree with their calls. Voicemails, messages, missed FaceTimes, each one a frantic hymn to the mother they had so confidently buried the night before. I watched the screen light up, each ring sounding like a broken apology they were too proud to say aloud. I didn't answer, because I was done being their emergency exit. By noon, he showed up on my porch, the same porch I'd swept while he played with toy trucks, the same porch where I'd held him after his first heartbreak. Only now, there was no little boy left, just a grown man who looked at me like a slot machine that had finally jammed. Mom, you can't do this, he pleaded, voice raw, no audience this time, no toasts, no bright lights. I folded my arms. I already did. He tried to laugh it off, but the sound died in his throat. You promised me that place. I nodded, calm as the ocean before a storm. And you promised me respect. He flinched. His wife tried to speak up behind him, but I held up a finger. She went quiet, as if she could feel the hurricane boiling under my ribs. I gave you everything, I continued, voice steady as a blade. And you stood in front of strangers and announced that someone else replaced me. You think a mother forgets that? He looked down, as if the concrete held better answers than my eyes. I didn't mean it like that, he mumbled. I shook my head. You meant it exactly like that. I let the silence stretch, a bridge he could never cross again. He tried one last time, grabbing my hand like a drowning man. Mom, I have nothing without that apartment. We'll be stuck here. We can't afford anything else. I let him hold my fingers, but there was no warmth left in me to give. Maybe you should ask the woman who replaced me to help. His grip slipped away, like water through a sieve. I stepped around him, walked back into my house, shut the door behind me. I leaned against it for a moment, listening to the quiet, a quiet that finally felt like peace instead of loneliness. He had believed I would never stand up to him, that my love was a weakness he could carve into until I bled out completely. But mothers are made of sterner stuff. We survive childbirth, heartbreak, sleepless nights, and we rise again. He banged on the door one more time, frustration turning his words to ash. "I am still your son," he shouted. I closed my eyes. "And I am still your mother," I called back. "But I'm done being your bank." I walked away from that door, each step a rebirth. The living room looked different somehow, lighter. Maybe it was the sunshine streaming through the window, maybe it was the weight I'd just ripped off my shoulders. I sat down with a cup of tea, breathing, feeling, alive in a way I hadn't for years. I could almost taste the salt of my own tears, but they weren't sad tears. They were tears of release. I had carried him as long as any mother could, but I would not carry his pride. As I looked out across the yard, the branches of the oak tree danced in the breeze, almost like they were clapping for me. For the first time, I felt like my own name belonged to me again. Grace. How fitting. 3 days passed. 3 days of silence from him, from her, from everyone. I thought maybe that meant they'd accepted it, that my final line in the sand had been drawn. But pride is a hungry thing, and humiliation even hungrier. On the 4th day, there was a knock on my door that rattled the frame. I opened it to find his wife standing there, mascara streaked, her perfume fighting a losing battle against the sourness of desperation. "Grace," she began, voice sugar-coated and shaking. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside, not out of kindness, but curiosity. I wanted to see what tricks they would play next. She sat on my couch, the one I'd bought back when I believed in cozy family Sundays, and folded her hands like a prayer gone stale. "I know things got complicated," she said, "but we're family. We should act like it." I almost laughed. Family. They remembered that word only when their greed was threatened. She leaned forward. "You raised a wonderful man, Grace. He's just under a lot of pressure, you know? Work is hard, and we've been so stressed, and—" I cut her off with a single glance. "You came for money, so just say it." Her mouth twitched, revealing the teeth under the lipstick smile. "We need that apartment. We really do. It's not fair to pull it away after you promised." I sipped my tea slowly, letting the quiet ring around her. "And it was fair," I asked, "to stand in front of your family and say I'd been replaced?" She faltered. That tiny moment of honesty was my victory. "You don't understand." She tried again, voice sharper now. "We can't get a loan without you. We basically homeless without your help." My shoulders loosened, as if 1,000 bricks slid off them. "Then you'll learn to build something on your own," I said. Her face changed. The sweetness curdled into acid. The mask fell. "You're being cruel." I set my cup down. "Cruel?" I whispered. "Do you know what cruel is? Cruel is feeding a child for 29 years, patching his knees, paying his college, his wedding, his dreams, only to hear that another woman replaced me in a single toast. That is cruel." She swallowed, but didn't dare argue. I leaned forward, lowering my voice until it was a blade. "You replaced me, so find your own money." She left without another word, shoulders hunched, dignity dragging behind her like a torn train on a ruined wedding dress. When the door closed, I stood in the center of my living room, breath steady. I was not a monster, though they'd try to name me one. I was a woman who had been burned one too many times, standing in the ashes and deciding to build a house of stone instead of straw. That night, I slept for the first time in months without waking up to phantom fears, fears of growing old alone, of being unwanted, of being forgotten. Those fears had been the bars of my own cage, and they broke the moment I refused to fund their disrespect. The next morning, I donated the apartment officially. Single mothers in the city would finally have a place to start again, built on my sacrifice, yes, but not my humiliation. I signed the paperwork with a flourish, a new woman behind my old name. Grace, a woman they would never dare replace again. I didn't expect him to come alone, but he did. 2 days after his wife's bitter visit, he stood on my porch with a look I had not seen since he was 12, eyes rimmed red, lips pressed tight, hands shoved in his pockets like he'd lost every anchor. "Mom," he started, but the word trembled. I didn't answer right away. I studied him, the boy I had raised into a man I barely recognized. The boy who once brought me wilted dandelions, calling them roses. The boy who once promised never to leave me behind. "Can I come in?" he asked, voice cracking. I nodded. He stepped inside, took off his shoes, just like I taught him. Habit clung to him even when respect did not. He stood awkwardly in the living room, eyes darting around like he couldn't find a place to belong anymore. I wanted to apologize," he began. My breath caught. "Apologize," he went on, words spilling like an unraveling rope. "I don't know what I was thinking, Mom. That toast. I was trying to make her mom feel welcome. You know? I didn't mean to erase you." His voice broke, but I did, and I see it now. For a moment, a rush of pity rose in me, but I smothered it. Pity was how I'd ended up used in the first place. "You didn't just erase me," I told him, quiet as a confession. "You replaced me with someone who didn't raise you, with someone who never scraped pennies to feed you, never stayed up all night when your fever hit 104. You replaced me in front of the world." His shoulders buckled under my words. "I was wrong," he said, almost a whisper. "Please, let me fix it." I tilted my head. "Fix it? Or make it easier for yourself?" His jaw clenched. "Mom, I need your help. We can't do it without you. I can't do it without you." There it was, the raw truth. I let the silence stretch, watched him twist in it. Then I asked, gently but with iron underneath, "Why do you think you deserve it?" He opened and closed his mouth like a fish gasping for air. No words. I stepped closer, smelling his cologne, the same one I'd given him on his last birthday. "You forgot who built you," I said, "and now you want me to build you again." He looked so small, so breakable, but I would not let that break me. "Mom," he begged, voice cracking open. "Please." My hands itched to hold him like I did when he was small, but I refused to reach. That was the hardest thing I had ever done, to stand there, arms by my side, while my child begged. "You have to stand on your own," I told him, tears burning my throat. "You chose your loyalty, now live with it." He sank to the couch, defeated, head in his hands. I watched him, my heart fracturing, but not bending. "There is nothing left for me to give," I whispered, barely breathing. Outside, the wind rattled the shutters, the same song it had played through every sleepless night I'd worried over him. But tonight, I did not worry. Tonight, I reclaimed the space I had so freely given away. My son sat in the quiet, learning the weight of a mother's silence, the cost of throwing her love away. And I, for the first time in decades, felt like a woman whose name was finally her own. Grace. Let him remember it. Let him learn. He didn't leave right away. Hours passed with him sitting there on the couch, crumbling under the gravity of everything he'd taken for granted. I watched him from the kitchen, the way you might watch a wildfire from a safe distance, too dangerous to touch, too mesmerizing to ignore. He looked up once, eyes shining wet. "Mom, please, I'm your son." I steadied my breath. "Yes, and I will always be your mother. But you forgot that mothers are not free." He flinched like I'd slapped him, but there was no apology left in me to soothe him. I had given him every drop of sweetness I had. His shoulders sagged. "What do you want me to do?" I stepped forward, cold clarity in my bones. "I want you to learn," I said. "To struggle, to build, to bleed for your dreams the way I did for you." He went quiet, letting my words root themselves in the softest, most hidden corners of his pride. Finally, he stood up, moving like a man twice his age. "You're really not going to help us?" I shook my head, gentle but firm. "No." He nodded, swallowing hard, as if trying to digest a world that no longer bent for him. He left without another word, and I closed the door behind him with a finality that made my hands tremble. I pressed my forehead to the cool wood, letting the silence wrap around me. It was done. In the following days, my phone stayed silent. The quiet was a strange new friend, awkward, comforting, honest. For the first time in my life, I had no one depending on me, no one clawing at my resources, no one rewriting my worth in their convenience. I began to rediscover who I was outside of motherhood. I started volunteering at the shelter where the apartment proceeds would go, meeting women who reminded me of myself once upon a time, frightened, overlooked, powerful in ways they hadn't learned to name yet. There, in that space of second chances, I felt my own soul unbend. One evening, I was helping a young mother sort donated baby clothes when she looked at me with a soft, hopeful gaze. "You're the woman who gave us the apartment, right?" I nodded, throat tight. She reached out, gripping my hands. "You saved my life." Tears slipped down my cheeks before I could stop them. No one had thanked me like that in years, not without a price tag or a polite obligation. That night, I lay in bed with an ache in my heart, but it was the ache of healing, not harm. I realized my love was never meant to be a weapon or a chain. It was meant to build. And if my own son had chosen to destroy everything I gave him, then I could give that love to someone who would treat it like gold instead of garbage. In the dim light of my bedroom, I whispered to myself, I am still a mother. But this time, I was a mother to my own dreams, too. A woman. Grace. I slept deeper than I had in years, as though the earth itself had granted me permission to rest. And somewhere, far beyond those walls, I hope my son was learning what I had been forced to teach him. That love, even a mother's love, is not owed. It is earned. Days folded into weeks. The sun rose and set, washing my house in a quiet so rich it almost felt holy. I filled my time with small acts of freedom, planting herbs in the window box, polishing the silver my mother left me, reading poetry out loud just for the sound of my own voice. Then, one afternoon, my doorbell rang, shattering the gentle calm I'd nurtured. I opened it to find him standing there again, but something had changed. His hair was messy, his clothes rumpled, and there was a hollow in his eyes I'd never seen before. "Mom," he said, voice stripped of its old confidence, "can we talk?" I let him in, because no matter how far a child falls, a mother's heart never fully slams shut. He didn't sit this time. He paced, shoulders tight, words tumbling out. We tried to get alone. We tried asking her mom. Everything fell through. No one will help us. No one except you. His eyes were frantic, searching mine for that well of unconditional love he'd always counted on. But I'd drained that well dry. "Son," I began, steady, calm, almost tender. "You stood up in front of the world and declared another woman had replaced me. You drew that line, not me." He winced. "I know. Good, I know." Tears spilled down his face, raw and childish in a way that hurt to see. I was stupid. I was trying to please everyone. I didn't think. I cut him off, quiet but firm. "No, you didn't." He dropped to his knees, hands clutching mine, tears dripping onto my wrist. "Please, Mom, just this once. I swear I'll make it up to you." My heart cracked right down the middle. I felt every molecule of his pain, but I also felt my own. "Son," I whispered, pulling my hands from his grasp, "I have nothing left to give you." He looked up at me, eyes wide, shattered. "But you're my mother." "Yes," I breathed, voice shaking, "and I will always love you. But love does not mean funding your disrespect." He collapsed onto the carpet, sobbing, lost in a world he had built on my back and then set on fire. I watched him, my own tears falling, because no mother dreams of seeing her child broken. But sometimes you must let your child break, so they can learn to rebuild themselves. "I gave you everything," I told him, voice catching on the truth. "Now it's your time to stand." He looked so small, so fragile, and for a moment, the old urge to rescue him screamed inside me. But I held the line. I had to. "Mom, what am I supposed to do?" he cried. I reached out, smoothed his hair back, the way I used to when nightmares chased him. "Figure it out," I said. The way I did. The way every grown person does. His shoulders shook with the weight of his own choices. I stood then, because I could not watch him crumble another second. My soul could not take it. I went to the window and looked outside, where the breeze moved the leaves in a graceful dance. "I will always be your mother," I said, soft as a benediction. "But you must become your own man." He stayed on the floor, gasping, broken. But I turned away, carrying my own healing forward like a banner. My name is Grace, and for the first time I felt its meaning. Poised, strong, unshakable. The morning after his tears stained my carpet, I woke to a strange calm. The air in my house felt lighter, as if every ghost had finally stepped aside to let me breathe. I made coffee, black and hot, the way I liked it before other people's preferences swallowed my own. No calls came, no knocks on the door, just silence, pure and true, reminding me I was still alive and free. By noon, I decided to visit the apartment I'd donated. I needed to see where my sacrifice had landed, needed to stand in the doorway of a place built from my blood but given in love. The young mother who'd moved in, her name was Dana, greeted me with wide, astonished eyes. "Your Grace," she whispered, like I was something more than flesh and bone. I nodded. She showed me around the tiny space. It wasn't grand, but it was safe, clean, hopeful. A place no one could take from her because she would own it, not owe it. Toys littered the floor. Baby laughter bounced off the walls, and for the first time, I felt my generosity settle somewhere that wouldn't rot it out with entitlement. "Thank you," Dana said, tears bright in her eyes. "I don't know how to repay you." I smiled, raw but honest. "Live well," I told her. "Raise that baby with love. That's all the repayment I'll ever need." She hugged me so tightly I thought my heart might break all over again, but this time it was a good break, the kind that made room for something new to grow. I stepped out into the sunlight, letting the warmth hit my face, and in that moment I knew something unshakable. I had not lost my son, not truly. I had lost my illusions of him, my illusions of what love should cost. He would stand, or he would fall, but either way, he would learn. And me? I was more than a mother. I was a woman who had survived disappointment and betrayal, and turned it into a kind of power I never knew I carried. Days later, I heard he'd taken a second job, that he'd called his in-laws for help, that he was trying, truly trying, to stand on his own feet for the first time. It hurt, yes, it burned, but there was pride in that pain, too, because even if he had to crawl through it, he would learn the value of building a life with his own hands. One day, maybe he'd come back to me, not as a son begging at my feet, but as a man ready to meet me eye to eye. That would be a reunion I could welcome with open arms. Until then, I chose to live, to water my herbs, to read my poetry, to find my own reflection in the mirror again and know she was worthy. Grace, mother, yes, but also a woman. Whole. That was my justice. That was my freedom.